Good evening, school committee to order. We have a special meeting we had this evening, Thursday, April 25th, 2024. Before we do attendance, I could have a statement regarding recording.
Good evening. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you. If you choose to enable your video or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background, could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recorded meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded if they actively participate or not.
Thank you. Roll call. Attendance?
Mr. Marsh?
Yep.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yep.
Ms. Garvey?
Here.
Ms. Cartier?
Here.
Mrs. Chamberlain?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Nutter?
Here.
Mr. Brophy?
Here.
And Mr. Whitelaw.
Here.
Wonderful. And call the meeting to order. Again, thank you, school committee members, for continuous improvement model, as we believe and think and believe that way. Our first item is MASC training, an on-site dealing with the superintendent's evaluation on the process. And we have Alicia Mallon from MASC, who worked with us a couple months ago. And thank you for coming out to Quabbin this evening to give us, we have new members, but also some of us need refreshers. And we want to make sure that we are doing it. Oh.
I'll step behind the lines.
Fine. Let's start. And is on evaluation. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Alicia.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me back out tonight. It was great to meet with you all when I did a couple months ago. The drive is lovely. I went to college up in Ringe, so it's nice to go out this way via Route 2. So I think, if I'm being picked up by that microphone, the one right there?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what I'm going to do then is I will keep my mic off because I don't want to have it loop on anyone. And I will share my screen. Oh, let me go back into that. Hold on one second. Technology, it's wonderful. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about a very basic overview of the superintendent evaluation process. At first blush, anyone who has done this, it looks complicated, but I promise it's not as complicated. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So starting with the agenda for today. So our agenda for today is we're going to start with goal setting, because how do you evaluate if you don't know where you were supposed to be going in the first place? Once we talk about that, we'll talk about sort of the symbiotic relationship between school committee goals, district goals, and superintendent goals. And then we'll talk about the evaluation itself, do a quick overview of that. And I will talk about the model process. Here's where it starts. If you've never done it before, here's where people start feeling panicky. It's okay. It's a 5-step cycle with a 2-part tool and a multi-part rating system. But it's all feeding information in and out. And then we'll go over how it works, what happens in each step of the cycle, what decisions are to be made, some overall tips that we find for best practices to make it go smoothly, and then additional considerations you might have. So first up, why do we set goals? So I'm pretty sure I had this slide in my roles and responsibilities workshop with you all a couple months ago, but why do we set goals? Well, you can't measure your progress if you don't know where you were supposed to be going in the first place, very simply. Goals tell the employees of the district, they tell the community, they tell your parents and your students what it is you're trying to achieve and whether or not you're achieving that. We very often say at MASC, if you don't have kids in a school district in a town, you don't necessarily know how functioning the schools are beyond what you see at a school committee meeting or online in a school committee, recording of a meeting. You want to make sure that your goals and your goal setting process is clear and well-defined so that not only are you making progress in the right direction, but so that others can see you're making progress. So your progress is visible and measurable to everyone. So, and then, you know, if you don't set your goals, someone else will, or it'll just sweep away with the tide and you'll just keep going and you won't actually get to make progress on the things your district would like to make progress on. So the continuous improvement cycle. We start with district strategy. So when you're thinking about things like your strategic improvement plans, if you have directives from DESE based on evaluations they may have done, what is the district's overall strategy for where you want the district to go? From there, we try to create SMART goals. We'll talk a little bit about SMART goals in a minute, but those things are, you know, measurable, they are clear, they have review points in them. Then you link those goals to budget and policy. And if any of you have ever heard me speak before, your biggest policy document, I say this all the time, I got it from my colleagues at MASC, your biggest policy document is your budget. Because your budget is the reflection of the things you value in your policies and your procedures and all of your improvement plans and things like that. Your budget is the end expression of all those policies. And then there's your policies too. So after that, we implement. And that will start our cycle of implementation and monitoring. And for superintendent evaluation, there's actually a two-step process of monitoring. One is in the middle as a check-in and one is at the end. And then all of that monitoring, when you're done, when you've finished your superintendent evaluation, you then take the results from that evaluation and use it to create your next round of goals and your next round of strategy. So if we're doing it well, it is a circle. And if you've heard me speak before, oh, the font got away there. If you've heard me speak before, you've also seen this before. This is how we align the district's goals. You always start with district. Up is your school improvement plans, your district improvement plans, your superintendent goals, your school committee goals. And having those linked to each other and all rowing in the same direction means that everything else should stack on top. From there, there's the administrator goals. And that is not something the school committee does, but that is very well something that you could hear from the superintendent on. How are the administrators doing? Teacher goals, again, not school committee, but you will hear through the superintendent's exhibits when they bring their goals back to you, how those things are progressing in your district. And if we do everything right, the very top of the pyramid is student achievement. So every goal in the district should be aligned for the betterment of the students. So how do you make sure a goal is measurable? When we're talking about superintendent goals, the superintendent and the school committee create the goals together. And part of a best practices process is you decide when the goals are approved, what the artifacts will be that the superintendent brings back to you. So it's a strange process for school committees and superintendents when they first start working together on it, because you'll have a goal that you create together, you'll have artifacts, and then the proof of whether or not it's working will be supplied by the person being evaluated. P.S. they're being evaluated in public, which is like the only job that ever makes you do that live on television. So measurable outputs and outcomes makes that easier. So when you get to the table at the end of the school year and you have the goals and you're talking about the evaluation, if you have made sure that your progress is measurable, that there are outcomes, that there are benchmarks, and quantitative versus qualitative data. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that every goal is going to have, say, testing scores to back it up. The difference between the goals will dictate what the artifacts become. So say you have a goal of the superintendent creating more professional development opportunities. The artifacts would be results from scheduled professional development, maybe feedback from staff. You wouldn't necessarily have like a flow chart of numbers to back that up, but you would have evidence. So, and another thing to know is that the superintendent evaluation got an overhaul a few years ago to align with the educator evaluation process in Massachusetts. So it was sort of reverse engineered out of that. and before my time. So, any questions so far? I did build in a big chunk of time for questions at the end. So the three key components, you have your 5-step cycle, you have your 2-part tool, and that's goals, which are determined by the superintendent with the school committee, and the school committee will choose standards. There are 4 of them. And then there's a multi-part rating system. And I know that's a lot of words. So 5-step cycle, we start over here with goal setting and plan development. Implementation, of course. The mid-cycle review, there's twice when you're going to dip back into the superintendent's goals. One is in the middle of the year, and we'll talk about what those assessments actually look like. But one is in the middle of the year, and that's far more informal than the process where you fill out the big rubric and all that. That's a formative assessment. That's checking in. How are our goals doing? Did you say, we're going to build a brand new building, and in order to do so, we need to get this grant? Well, you get to the middle of the year and you didn't get the grant, you need to reassess the goal. That is not something that is the fault of the superintendent. You just need to reassess the goal and realign the school committee and the superintendent. And then at the end, there's the final evaluation, which is the big rubric that everyone has seen. And we'll talk about the process for how you put that together.
Does it have to be a 1-year cycle
In the beginning,
in the beginning? Right,
when you have a superintendent who has been a superintendent for less than 3 years, it
okay,
has to be an every year cycle.
okay,
Once you get beyond 3 years, if you'd like, you can move to a 2-year cycle. However, most of your goals are going to keep, linking in for continuous years anyway. So what you want to think about when you're making the goals is it may be a 2-year goal, but what do you want to achieve in that first year? And that's where the review at the end comes in handy to self-assess and then move that goal to its next level. So for new superintendents, yes, every year. After 3 years, you can do it 2 years.
wait,
So the multi-part process, the model process, the evaluation tool. First up is the SMART goals. The superintendent will develop their goals and bring them to the school committee. The superintendent has to develop a goal in each of these areas: professional practice, student learning, and district improvement. Usually there's 4 goals, and very often you'll see a district improvement. There'll be 2 of them because there's a lot more things that you can assign to that subject. In your case, because you have a superintendent who's moving from interim to full-time, and I did ask, you're going to be doing the induction process, right? So as part of the superintendent's induction program through MASS, they will help with entry plan and things like that. Do not think that your first year goals need to be in addition to your entry plan. The goals for that first year should be pulled directly out of the entry plan. So when you're making the entry plan and you bring it back to the school committee and you all talk about what the goals should be, align your goals to that process. And there will be backup for the superintendent through MASS. And of course, we're always here if anyone needs us here. We like to see SMART goals. Again, that's the specific and strategic. I tried to put both of those words together. Measurable, action-oriented, rigorous, realistic, and results-focused, timed and tracked. There are some districts that are adding an E at the end there as we move towards looking at our policies through a more equitable lens for students. You don't have to, you can stick with SMART goals. And then to know about SMART goals is that they have key actions and benchmarks. It's not just, we're going to make sure our students have better test scores. Okay, well, how are we going to do that? How are we going to measure that? What is the actual goal? What test scores? Are you talking about MCAS? Are you talking about English proficiency? What are you talking about? So.
and potentially a percentage and a time frame.
Yes, absolutely. So my font got all wacky here. The model process part 2. So the goals the superintendent comes up with and the school committee approves the goals. It's generally a conversation. It's a good idea to start having that conversation very early in the school year so that you can lay out the process. The school committee will then look at the standards and indicators of professional practice, effective professional practice. So that's where all of the focus indicators come in and people start getting a little concerned. So you will review the superintendent on these 4 categories: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. I probably shouldn't have gone, ignore that for a second. So when you're choosing under those 4, so everyone has this in your packet. I only printed for you the relevant things from our PDF, but I did email ahead. We have a 36-page PDF that talks all about the superintendent evaluation process. If anyone's, interested in reading it for fun. No? Okay. So when you look at the 4 standards, these are your 4 standards. And then down the columns, there will be focus indicators. You do not need to use all of them. Please, please, for the love of cupcakes, don't use all of them. You'll make yourself crazy. What you should be doing with the focus indicators is say under number 1. Wait, can I do this? Aha. Say under instructional leadership. Your superintendent has a goal of introducing a new reading curriculum. Okay, so then you go into, in this handout, under instructional leadership, there's 1A, curriculum. Okay, that sounds right. 1B, instruction, maybe. 1C, assessment. Oh, yes, because we're introducing a new curriculum and we want to know how it's going. 1D, evaluation. That sounds about right. That's a conversation the school committee has with the superintendent. Which focus indicators in those categories line up best with the goals? They should be symbiotic. They don't have to exactly overlap, but they should be more symbiotic than anything else.
So no, okay, I hear you. I hear you about the lining up, the focus of them. Do you have to use all of them?
No,
No, that's okay. So that's the relationship and the
Yep.
shaking out, what the relevancy and your crosswalk
yes,
of those goals
Mhm.
and indicators equate to.
yes. And go ahead.
Is this something that's determined by the committee, say, we all agree that we're going to do maybe 4 of those? Is that something that's prepackaged so that none of us will go into the ones that may not have?
Correct. The best practice I've ever seen is when you start the process, when you first bring your goals forward. There's a form that I can actually, I think I didn't send it to you all, but there's a form that's literally a step-by-step checklist of dates and agreements. We're going to start the process here. We're going to move on to this. This is what the goals are. This is when we're going to meet. When we do the summative, we've decided to have the chair put it together, have the administrative assistant put it together, the composite, have a subcommittee. You'll decide on how you're going to do that. And there's a document that you can fill in the blanks for all of that. The best practice I can recommend to you is at the beginning of the process, when you first bring your goals forward and you're discussing the goals, then is the time to discuss the focus indicators. And then one of the absolute best practices I've ever seen is as you go through the year, on your agenda, you can indicate if something actually relates directly back to an original goal. Because then when it's time, and I stole this from my district, Superintendent Pigeon and my chair, Charlie Ellis, are phenomenal, and that's how we do our agendas. Our agendas link back to what the goals are. And the goals all link back to the portrait of a graduate, and all the subcommittee goals all link back, so it's all stacked nice and neat in that pyramid. And then when you're talking about your exhibits at the end of the year, they're already in your agenda. You don't have to go digging for them. They're right there. There won't be a scramble at the end. So agreeing ahead of time is absolutely the best way to do that, 100%.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Talk about like we just outlined there, that not only keeps you organized, you crosswalk it better. Think about the administrative assistant and the superintendent, and then the information is relevant as well as any other information that the superintendent wants to support and bring forward. We still had everything here throughout the year because the agendas are going to be curriculum rich, student results focused, and then other relevant, not only professional, but also community based
Yes.
information.
And your agenda won't only be superintendent goals. Clearly, there's the housekeeping of the district that you need
Exactly.
to go through. But when you do put something on that relates back, absolutely tag it with the goal. 100%. I stole that.
We might too.
Please do. Okay, so when we get to, we'll go back and talk about the formative assessment again momentarily, but when we get to the end and you have to do the big form scares everyone. When you're evaluating the superintendent, you're evaluating on each of the goals that your superintendent has brought to you, and you evaluate them one of 5 ways. Exceed, met, significant progress, some progress, did not meet. I would advise you, because you have someone who's transitioning into a full-time superintendency, significant progress or some progress, you can tweak how you word that. You're supposed to rate them of the 5, but everything's in progress when it's your first year. It's not a pejorative to say that there is progress. Please don't think of it that way. What we're looking for is the conversational feedback that allows you to improve and allows the school committee to know what it is you're doing. We're not looking for an A grade. We're not looking for an F grade. We're looking for the conversation. So those 5 are under goals. And then those 4 standards with all of the indicators, you rate those exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, and unsatisfactory. Needs improvement, this is another place where you might say in progress here instead of needs improvement, if it feels better. You're in progress. You have a new superintendent. There's a theory floating around that the reason there's 5 and 4 is so that you can't just put them together and average them, because that's not what DESE wanted. They did not want a number score. They want the conversational feedback. So when you're done with those 2, there will be an overall summative rating.
Right.
Overall, what's your impression? And that's the point in the evaluation rubric that DESE puts out where there's space for a comment. So that's, again, exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, unsatisfactory. So that's where you would express, you get a chance in other places too, but that's the overall rating plus a little bit of, dialogue back and forth. Does anyone have any questions there? Okay. So how does it work? I love when we bring back the little bean guys. So again, the goal setting. You work with the superintendent to draft goals. This can be done one of 2 ways. You can do it with the entire committee. That can be cumbersome. You can create a subcommittee, a superintendent goals and evaluation subcommittee. And that subcommittee can stay with the process for the entire year, help develop the goals, bring them to the school committee for feedback. And then you would develop with the superintendent, not just the goals, and then the indicators under the performance standards. And then you would bring it back, and then that committee can put together the composite, which is the report that comes to the full committee at the end. When you do that, you have to identify the standards and the indicators. All 4 of those standards have to be evaluated. Not all of the indicators have to be used. And then as part of that process, before you even start, you agree on what the evidence is going to be, and you agree how proficiency or progress is going to be demonstrated. So we'll go back to our fictitious adopting a new curriculum. It could be, what were the scores on the MCAS compared to last year? They're not all like that. What are the number of students being referred for intervention in reading versus last year? Does that tell us something about the progress? So not everything will have a number or a scale or a percentage attached to it, but you'll agree ahead of time on what those evidence and proficiency and progress standards will be. Okay. And then you implement the plan and everything's fine. No. So this is where we get to the formative assessment. Formative assessment is your mid-year check-in. Generally, because we're school districts, formative assessment, January, December is usually a time when it's appropriate to check in. It's an opportunity for feedback. It's an opportunity to realign. You don't want to turn to your superintendent and say, listen, your goals in the fall were great. We have a new idea. We want to do this. That's not what this is for. This is for realignment and check-in. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page. And if the superintendent has concerns, as with the example of the grant that fell through, that's the time for the superintendent to come to you and say, listen, this is what my goal was in the fall, but all of these things have happened. Let's talk about what we should do moving forward.
And there are probably a couple of ways of dealing that with on an agenda. You could do it as a formal item. Could it also be done through a superintendent's report and use it through a reportive measure of a check-in? Or is it a formal,
I would make it an agenda
Item.
item.
okay,
Because all throughout the year, the superintendent's report will contain bits and pieces of that.
exactly.
And then when you make it an agenda item, and you clearly delineate on the agenda that this is going to be a discussion. When we talk about really well-functioning agendas, very often they're tagged with discussion, no vote being taken, or first discussion, vote being taken on X date. So I would say indicate that it's a discussion, but it's not a vote on the superintendent's final evaluation. Just the discussion, yes.
I'm just trying to think this through. A lot of times, like I work on certain subcommittees, everybody works on different subcommittees, and a lot of times when I go to fill out the superintendent's evaluation, I'm not sure. So, or I'm not that aspect of the superintendent's work really, I wasn't close to. So I work on student services and I work on negotiations, and I know how those work. Suppose there's a curriculum committee, subcommittee. So what you're saying is that if the superintendent presents evidence in the agenda that's tied to the agenda, artifacts during the meeting year,
Yes.
we'd be able to access those in order to help us with the evaluation.
Yes, and actually at the very end of the process, the superintendent will give you all of that again. Literally, it will say, you'll say, here are my artifacts for your evaluation. You'll have seen them all throughout the year, but again, that's easier for you to put them all together if they've been tagged throughout the year. You will see them, but then at the very end, you will give them to the school committee and say, these are all of my artifacts. And usually there's like a cover letter that goes with that. And, here's my progress. Here's the artifacts I'm giving you. Maybe a little bit of an update if there's an update from the formative assessment to the summative assessment. So you're not going into it with no information whatsoever. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So the summative assessment, the summative evaluation, I think is where everyone gets a little bogged down in the process. Because you're not bringing, how many committee members do you have?
15.
You're not bringing 15 evaluations. We say this all the time at MASC, the superintendent has one boss and it's the committee as a body. And the body has one employee. So what you're going to end up doing at the end is you're not looking for an average of all of the scores. You're putting together the composite evaluation. So over here, down at number 2, I have a couple of ways that you can do that. You can have the chair, you can have the subcommittee that we were talking about. You should discuss the process for preparation with the full committee. The subcommittee is going to do this. They're going to meet on X and Y date, or if it's the chair, everyone needs to have them into me by this time so that I can put together the composite. The superintendent will give you their self-assessment and the evidence. And then there's a form on Dusty's website that you can download for everyone to put all of their information in. The composite evaluation is not a transcript and it's not quotes. What you're looking for from the composite evaluation is the impression you would get if the school committee were having a discussion. Your voices should be reflected. You don't count how many times someone said yes or no. You don't quote things, but you're giving the impression of the feedback that was given. So all evaluators indicated that they appreciated the feedback that was given by the superintendent on this literacy program at multiple meetings. Some evaluators felt like they could have used more data. Others thought you're giving a composite. It's a summary. When you get to the proficiency, I would have to go back. When you get to the satisfactory, unsatisfactory, you're not counting how many of those you got either. it's as if you voted. And if the majority of you felt like it was satisfactory, then the overall rating is satisfactory. You can include in the composite if there were some very outliers, if there were way out there, someone was like, everything is exemplary, which like a standards-based report card, not everything is going to be exemplary, even for the best of a superintendent. But you can include the outliers, but what you're looking for is sort of that average without averaging it by dividing it. Does that make sense? Okay, I personally, that's the part that I struggle with too, because when you're trying to create your evaluation, you want to make sure that your opinion is being expressed, but the body has to rule. So, and you can't talk to each other while you do it, because the superintendent evaluation must take place in an open meeting. The only job that I know of that you would have to have your performance review in front of the entire public. So you can't talk about it ahead of time, which is why honestly, the subcommittee is a really good way to do that, because then there's a couple people in there and it's not just one person. With all of the, Dorothy used to say it was the time of year where she would spread out everything on the dining room table and it would just be covered in paper and she would be pulling things from all these different places by herself. It's easier if you do it with the subcommittee. So when we're talking about the evaluation, there are some things that are required, and this is a review, and then there are things that are optional. Required are SMART goals, and the superintendent must have one goal from each of those categories: district improvement, student learning, professional practice. Then you have to rate on all 4 standards: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, professional culture. And then at the end of both of those, you do the overall summative rating. The optionals, you do not need to use all of the indicators. A good sweet spot is a total of like 8 indicators. You have the 4 categories. Maybe some will have 2, maybe some will have 3. So maybe you'll have 10 total. Don't use all of them, you'll make yourself crazy. There is the option of weighting the standards differently. And if there's something in particular that your district is going through, you may be more focused on, say, a curriculum goal than something else. But you don't need to do that. And I think very often it unnecessarily complicates the situation. The timing of the evaluation cycle. So DESE doesn't tell us when these need to be done. DESE just says they have to be done every year. So when you're talking about school committees that seat people in January and seat people in May, or seat people at the beginning of the school year, you want to try to time your evaluation cycle with the school year, because the superintendent is literally being graded on what they did for the schools. But you don't necessarily have to line up with, you must do the formative in December. You just want to try and align it. Another word about timing, a question we get asked all the time is, we have committee members leaving and we have new committee members coming on. Every committee has that. What do we do? So the idea there is to actually have the seat be the evaluator, not the person. So the school committee member who is leaving has been part of this process the whole time, can submit their evaluation, but then they don't get to vote. The committee member who just came on may or may not submit an evaluation, but they get to vote. So it's as if the 2 people in the 2 people in the 1 seat are sharing the responsibility. You wouldn't expect someone who came on in May to be able to fill out an evaluation for someone they just started working with. And also someone leaving doesn't get to vote because they are no longer the elected member. So you want to strike that balance. The leaving member doesn't have to, and the incoming member also doesn't have to, but they should be part of the next process. And it's a good practice to, try it out while sort of the stakes are low for a new member, because they don't have to fill out the whole evaluation. They can just be part of the process. And they don't have to abstain. They can vote on the final evaluation, because what they're voting on is what the body is saying. That makes sense?
It does. How does a new member think of that perspective? Because is that comfortable or uncomfortable?
I think that it is more comfortable than having to sit there and fill out evaluation and go, I don't know what happened in the last 8 months.
Right, right.
So you can be part of or not,
Mhm.
and they don't have to be part of the whole, of the full.
Right. Being part of the
And vote.
discussion, right. No, the new member can vote. The old member doesn't vote.
Correct.
And then beyond that, how you use the evaluation, that's up to you. Are you going to use it just to evaluate your process and set your goals? Is it going to be part of contract negotiations? Is it going to be part of some sort of compensation system? DESI doesn't tell us what we have to do with them. They just say you have to do them. And then how you use it is up to you. And then the process for completing the evaluation. There are some districts that use online tools to help them. Whether or not you use the rubric, you should use the rubric from DESI, but whether or not you have this, use the subcommittee to do it or just one person, that is all up to you. The process is up to you.
So when you say like use an online tool, I'm just thinking like, for example, could you set up a Google form with all the questions that you wanted so it helps compile everybody's stuff in their document? Or are you saying like?
So no.
Yeah, okay.
I believe there's a program that some districts use. You can't set up a Google document because you shouldn't see each other's work.
Right.
As part of open meeting law, all of the summative evaluation, the composite evaluation is the committee speaking. When you have someone who has been designated by the committee to make the composite, or you have a subcommittee that's been designated to make the composite, that's okay, but they're not sharing with everyone else. So you couldn't even, like, you have to be very careful about how you send it out and downloading the copy of the PDF yourself because you shouldn't see what other people are putting in, et cetera. The other thing about the summative evaluation, the composite, is that that's what gets presented into the meeting, but the superintendent gets all of it because you can then see all of the feedback. Technically, all of it is a public document, but the document you're giving to the meeting is the composite.
Right.
The rest of the documents are public and could be requested, but what you're looking for as an evaluation team is the composite presented in the meeting. So. Okay,
What I've done in the past is made a fillable form
yes.
and emailed it to everyone and they sent them back separately.
Yes, as long as it gets set back separately. So my district uses board docs and there's a function in there that we use. It's not like you're just using straight up Google. There are, fillable docs are good.
Yep.
As long as nobody else can see it.
Yep.
So again, the timing of the cycle, what makes sense of what the district is for what the district is doing. The data is when you're talking about evaluations, who's preparing them, all of that should be discussed ahead of time. And then the newly elected members and who votes. Who votes is who's seated in the seat as a sworn-in member. If you're not seated in the seat as a sworn-in member, you don't get to vote. When I left my first committee, I was invited to create my evaluation and then attend the meeting if I wanted to speak to anything, but I would have to speak as a member of the public. I was not there to be part of the overall discussion. So very much keeping those lines and those lanes very clear. So we've come to the end of my slides, so we have time for questions. I changed that. Shouldn't say 111. Okay, so for MASC, our member resources, literally our member resources on our webpage, there are resource publications. There are also recordings of learning lunches, and there's a recording of when Dorothy Presser presented on superintendent evaluation a couple of years ago. So if you go onto MASC's webpage, under resources, there's all, there's also the 36-page thing that goes with this that I didn't print because let's try not to kill all the trees, but it's there so you can download it. And then of course, field directors or resources. DESI's resources, if you go to DESI's website at the bottom there, they have a 5-part video series. I'm gonna be a little salty and say I think our video series is better because Dorothy Presser did it and she's who taught me. I feel like their video series is more about how they got to that process. So if you'd like to understand how the superintendent evaluation process came about, that's a good thing. But they also have implementation guidance and rubrics that you can look at. There's some evidence documents up there so you can see what things look like. So that's that resource. And we are at questions. So does anyone have any questions about this? Remembering that that's me, and that really is my cell phone number. Everyone's like, is that really? Yes, that is really my number. So does anyone have any questions tonight?
I do.
Absolutely.
The rubric, does that stay the same every year, or do they change it?
It's the same every year,
Thank
their
you.
rubric. So they did work on this, I can't remember how long ago, within the last 10 years, I think. They did work on this as like the group of people that came together to talk about how the process was gonna work. That rubric on their website never changes.
Okay, new superintendents, first 3 years yearly, potentially for seasoned, it can be up to 2 years, it can be a 2-year cycle. If you start something in the fall, as we tend to look at, goals, October, November, check-in, February, January, February. Mid-cycle, you will call that mid-cycle? Would you call it, you call it formative?
It's mid-cycle and formative.
Okay, same, synonymous?
Yep, synonymous.
We don't have to feel, a committee doesn't have to feel pressured to get it done by June. Could it be done for July and August?
It could be done for July and August, especially when you're talking about a regional, because my regional meets over the summer at least once, so you could.
Yeah,
The idea behind trying to get it in at the end of the school year is that first year, you're a little behind because you're starting the school year. It's your first evaluation process. But every subsequent year, you should be looking at the goals, reflecting on the ones you just evaluated. So once you get into the cycle, it'll be easier to finish at the end of the school year and begin at the end of the school year. But for the very first year, if it goes into July, that's fine. I would say, I'm not sure if there's an absolute end date, but I would assume it's probably July 1st because everything in Massachusetts is July 1st.
that's July 1st. It's July 1st, right?
Can't turn over, we can't roll over Aspen until the evaluation's done.
Okay,
We've gone later than July
We're
1st.
gone,
We
it's
like
what, no,
to
yeah.
get it done as soon as we can, so
absolutely.
we can roll over.
Honestly, the best way to do it is try to get it in by your last meeting in June. And then there's plenty of time.
And if not,
Yep, if not, there isn't an evaluation police that will come in and
Exactly.
start writing tickets for everyone, but Desi does not like it when you're late. So,
that's what Jess has told us before.
yep,
And speaking for Quabbin, Colleen, interim, we'll have the full superintendency going forward. The superintendent had an entry-level plan coming in. That was kind of her way of, not only saying, hi, thank you for letting me be the interim, but I potentially hope to be here long.
right.
I think we could use that not only as this year, but it could also be, like you said, a continuous growth model for the following,
Absolutely.
if the superintendent wanted to keep those goals intact. They're in those those 3 categories.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. Use that document.
you don't have to force, because you had different language, an interim versus
Right.
a fully appointed or something like that. Oh,
Nope, you can absolutely use it. And it doesn't make.
Interim's
sense.
appointed anyway. That's how I look at it.
Right. It doesn't make any sense to create whole new sets of goals when you.
Right.
And working on what they said they were gonna do in their entry plan. So no, you do not need to invent a whole other set of goals, especially for an incoming superintendent. The entry plan is essentially your goals. So, and with the MASs coaches are really good. I did this in my district because we had someone coming in who it was his first year as a superintendent, so he did the induction program. His goals were reflective of his entry plan. So I've been through this process. MASs provides a lot of support along those lines. We can also provide support if you're sort of like, I'm not sure what we should be, like, does this indicator? MASC is here to help with that, but absolutely use the entry plan. There is no reason to have 2 sets of goals.
Oh, thank you. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Alicia?
Now, we'll be filling out this evaluation for Colleen as interim this year. Is that how that works? Or do we
Yep,
coming up, okay.
yep. But again, everything's in progress.
Exactly. And, well, and I'm not saying I shouldn't.
I am.
Well,
Aren't we all?
but like what Colleen asked us last year, she said, I'd like to give not only my goals as I'm going to do, but I want to check in how she reporting to us on a monthly basis through the reports and everything else. So she also said to us, this is what I want on me, please, so.
And I would say as part of that assessment at the end, you took an interim and you hired them full-time. That's feedback.
Right.
That should be included as well. Because here's the thing, these are public documents. You can go onto Dusty's website and you can see superintendent evaluations from all over the state. You hired your interim, you had that much faith, include that in the evaluation too. And then, like an introductory statement about how you're using the entry plan is carrying over, that should probably come from you first. But yep, absolutely.
Anyone else? Couple others. Evidence aside from, yes, I know what the language, our SMART goals might look like and it's and hit on. But if we're looking to, decrease, say, social emotional areas, and you're decreasing, we want to increase the mental health of our students. How are we going to measure that? Are we looking at by potential referrals, what's been offered? What, just curious what other indicators we could use as artifacts, including student feedback. I was wondering to know, does that have a place?
So absolutely. So if you're,
Superintendent, correct?
yes, through the superintendent. So you are not going out and surveying anyone. You
Exactly.
are not collecting data. For something like social emotional, I would say yes. Referrals for mental health, your risk behavior assessment,
Okay.
that should give you some feedback too. Talking to guidance about, what is the traffic they're seeing? What are the student concerns? That's all sort of quantitative data. Qualitative data could be things like the guidance counselors had professional development on, say, the panorama survey, which is something we used in my first district. And this is what the professional development was, and this is, going forward, this is our plan for using this survey. So that's a qualitative exhibit rather than just a quantitative exhibit.
And then dealing with school improvement plans. Even though I know we approve and we work through that, does a superintendent use those instruments to gauge the district progress? And how would that be communicated to a school committee?
So they absolutely can.
Okay.
And when you're talking about goal alignment, your district improvement plan, which, do you guys have a district improvement plan currently? What year are you in it?
Year two.
Year two?
It'll be two next year.
Is it a 3 or a 5?
3.
Okay, fantastic. Those were all the right answers. Prefer the 3-year now because 5 years is too long in education at this moment in time. A 3-year district improvement plan is far more reasonable. You need to be assessing frequently. The school improvement plans should be a reflection of the district improvement.
Exactly.
So bringing the school improvement plans, so when the school improvement plans come to you for next year, and you get the reports from the principals, that's not necessarily coming from the superintendent, but the superintendent has brought their administration to you to say, this is what we're working on. So yes, sort of that indirect around the way the school improvement plans come back to you. So it is part of evidence aligned to the goals. So especially like the professional, let me go back.
Professional culture or the learning?
Flip. Sorry. So your standards, so that would be under instructional leadership, it would also be family and community engagement. So when you're talking about the indicators under those standards, and you could very well have a goal, a superintendent identified goal that is along those lines as well, but you would definitely be able to review those underneath the standards.
And you don't have to use all the indicators under, yeah, that is something we haven't done to look at, that kind of perspective.
There's a lot.
Right, because we get the document, some of us can be good at that and others are not and saying, we don't know much of. But we need to, that's why I'm glad that we want to do this presentation, because we can do a continuous improvement ourselves
Absolutely.
in regards to how we outline it and not have to use the whole thing, and you can streamline it.
Walter's right, it was confusing, but now if it's more focused on specific indicators under the standards.
Yes,
I think we're gonna be better at evaluating that. And it's gonna be more efficient, more comprehensive than it had. Because I didn't know which ones to, do I know this? Do I not know this? How do I know this? Yeah, so.
Yeah.
And more valuable feedback.
Correct.
Because of that.
Right
Yeah,
there.
you're
I mean,
right.
this thing stressed me out more than anything I
I
did
know.
all year long.
Yes, that first year, when I saw that first rubric come through, I was looking at it thinking, what did I do? What is this? I could not, the joke is it reads like stereo instructions. It's
Really?
crazy, like, I don't understand.
good, good.
I don't know about everybody else,
He's
but-
right, this
No.
helps me out as much as the mandatory trainings go,
Yep.
It's true.
But that's why this was not only relevant, but important. Because not only the comfortability factor, the importance of the work, but the alignment of it.
Yes.
And that's the key. And as we know about what shared governance, good governance looks like, it's not a gotcha. It isn't about a gotcha, and it isn't about a cumulative thing that way. It's a composite and a work in progress and continuous improvement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you guys are getting close to your start time for your full committee meeting. I want to put a plug in for new members. We have charting the course coming up. There's one on May 4th, and then I think the next one is the 18th. There's definitely one in Burlington on the 22nd. They're on our website. We also have Day on the Hill coming up.
Yep.
And I was asked to remind everyone that students are free for Day on the Hill. So if you are coming to Day on the Hill and you want to register students to come with you, by all means, please do. I love Day on the Hill. It's one of my favorite days of the year. We can, again, come out and do any kind of governance workshop you want. We do them on all manner of subjects. We can tailor it to you. And it's free. It's included in your membership.
For our membership.
Yep.
Walter, are you going, or I know you've gone to on the Hill a couple of
I have
times.
gone before, yeah. I
Yeah.
wasn't planning to go this year, but I mean, I would go if we had some.
May 4th,
6th,
May 6th,
Monday, May 6th.
Monday, May 6th.
I think it's $90, right?
I think so, yes.
Let me know if I'm gonna register.
Also have,
Yeah, it's just,
I'll register, you let me know when you decide, and I'll register you.
all right, well, I don't
Where it's
know.
going.
If anybody else wants to go, I'd be happy to go.
we'll also have the Summer Institute coming up for our members. And we are currently working on the November joint conference. We are talking about what kinds of workshops we want to offer. So if you have any thoughts on that, drop us an email. Also coming up soon will be the deadlines for the resolutions.
Yes.
Delegate assembly. So if you have anything along those lines, all of the forms are on our website. But you can definitely email anyone in the office. And it was lovely seeing you all again.
Have you had an opportunity to go to charting the course yet?
Yes, or was it like the second or third week or?
Yeah. Chicopee, right, or Ludlow?
Yeah, I went out to Chicopee.
Okay.
Charity
Did
is
you like
signed
it?
up.
Yeah,
Crystal went as well that same day. And I
Yeah.
know Charity signed up for, I think, May 18th. Is that in Gardner?
I believe so,
Yep,
yes.
she signed up for that one.
And we're trying to bounce all over the state so that people don't have to drive.
If you ever want to hold one here, you're more than welcome.
Oh, that would be great.
So,
Yeah. Excellent.
And in
happy
the
to
past,
host it.
Yeah.
in the past, we've held it, I know that.
That's when I took it. See?
Mhm.
Here,
Yeah.
Beyond the training, just being able to talk to other school committee members is, it's helpful.
and then for like the fall conference,
Mhm.
is there anything on, I know Walton's been like one of your perspectives on potential threat assessment policy? Is there anything on how to help districts look at those type of things?
To my knowledge, no, but I will bring that to the field directors.
You notice the last, MASC bulletin, I think they had a thing on school safety.
On school safety.
If I remember right, there's quite a few bullets, but they didn't really get into threat assessment policies and building hardening and things like that.
Not at this moment advocating, but trying to research and look
Right,
to see, right?
right.
If there's relevancy and process, correct?
I've tried everything with my reps. Let's see, like tip line. Districts can't really afford a tip. I mean, I know this is really talk that we, so maybe we shouldn't talk about it, but.
Yeah.
I mean, it was something that I did advocate with my state senate.
Well, I will say if anyone
The
has,
states have.
yes, if anyone has any ideas like that,
That's what it was, ideas.
drop
Really
us a line.
ideas.
Yeah, drop us a line. You can email, you really can call me.
You want me to, you want me to contact you guys about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the field directors meet once a week and we're already talking about these things. And then once we get past Day on the Hill. I'm sorry, say that?
Who should I send it to?
You can send it to Glenn, you can send it to me, you can send it to anyone.
Well, thank you very much for coming out. Again, school committee members, for your time and effort on this as we continue to learn, but we get a better idea of how to utilize an assessment appropriately.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
This is my favorite thing to do. I love coming out to do workshops, so.
We'll take just maybe a 3-minute break, 3-minute recess, bathroom, water, whatever you need, and then we'll start the meeting. One glass of water.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
When you were out.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was still millions, so I took millions of those.
So,
For my house is more of a stage house.
So I will email you, I forgot to put it in with like other documents, I will email you that list of, this is what we're gonna do on this date. To start the planning process, so you have it for next year.
Oh, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, it was good to see you guys, yeah.
Not a bad afternoon drive this evening.
No, it was
for you.
nice, it stopped raining.
Yes.
It's done.
Are we? No,
We don't have a quorum.
we have a quorum of
I
people.
mean, we don't, right. We don't have 2/3 vote. We don't have a quorum.
You don't have a quorum for 2/3? There's no adjustment.
Anybody online?
Members.
What's that?
I have no members online.
No,
Can you delay it a little bit, Mr. Brophy?
of course I can.
Running late? Some phone calls or something?
Yeah, I think we could recess for a couple of minutes. We have a quorum for our meeting, but we don't have a potential number, our 2/3, if we have a budget adjustment. So let's recess for,
Where do you need to get online?
Well,
Hubbardston person, right?
we need a Hubbardson person if everyone votes affirmative.
I know Lee is away.
Correct.
Dr. Allen, I haven't heard. Dave, me, Dave. So there's 3. You know, Fred,
Mark's not available.
Mark's not available, right?
Fred's chair.
Is who?
He's working, I think he's working.
Crystal has basically said she's done, but we don't have notification of that from the town,
Right.
so.
She would be working.
Um,
I can send him a text. but I don't think he's-
and that wouldn't, even if Crystal came, that wouldn't get us up over, we need a Hubbardson person.
Who in Hubbardston?
I'm
Mark.
texting Charity.
Charity. But does have to be out.
30.
So we'd have to have a special meeting.
Would have to be Monday.
It would have to be the weekend or Monday.
Well, it's too late to post one for the weekends.
I know you are, that would be,
And actually, it's too late to post one for Monday unless I post it for like 7 o'clock and get it posted in minutes.
you might have to.
I suppose you could post it and we could cancel if we pulled off a miracle.
I just texted Charity.
Okay. Yeah.
Can't get Mark on the phone?
I don't know what Mark's situation was.
I don't know if he was away or.
I think he was away because it was like a period of time.
He
He
said he
asked
was-
me a while ago when they scheduled it tonight if there's anything at the subcommittee level. Played, so I don't know who it was, but he knew he was not available.
I'll text Dr. Allen, maybe he can,
But you would need,
yeah, I still, even with his vote,
we would need
I
2
need
people.
to, even with his vote would still be below. We need, because it's a 2/3 weighted vote of the entire committee, not just the members present.
Correct.
Cheryl and I double checked that tonight, just to be
No,
positive.
no, it's the entire.
Either Mark.
Yeah.
Well, we may have to have a special meeting at 7 o'clock on Monday. You always cancel it.
I don't know when Lee's due back. I don't know.
Work until 6 o'clock. I can't get out till at least 7:15.
7:30 Monday.
If you zoomed in. 7:15,
Station till 7.
7,
Stretching.
stretching.
I
Okay.
walk in the
You'll
door
run
at 6
over.
o'clock in the morning and I'm seeing patients until 7 o'clock. And then I have to start my notes
Right.
and I start the next day at 5:30. So I might not be. But that's right. I won't be
You can't count
listening
on
to a
these.
vote.
We can't count on you to be here,
Yes.
basically.
On Monday night. Everyone else here on Monday night, potentially?
I would have to zoom in. I have a troop meeting Monday night.
It's gonna be difficult for me to be here Monday night, just because I have office hours, but I can try to figure it out.
Is Crystal not available today? Did you try to get a hold? I didn't know
Hi.
if you tried.
Have her number.
Who else is on our list?
But we need a Hubbard
Yeah,
statement
that was the
specific.
And how was the person?
Or
Yes.
one of the others.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they both days or?
Well,
Mary.
right now, we're just on hold at this moment. We're on hold
We don't think she's.
Yeah. See you there.
and continue.
When's your election in Ocam?
May 20.
Don't think that's.
I don't know if anybody, I guess I gotta call town.
So
But
Mark, you
hopefully
don't know
if
if
no
Mark
one
Wiggles available.
runs, then they can appoint someone,
Well, hopefully, yeah.
right?
I don't know. I might,
Well, the seat's filled now, so there can't be any movement until it's vacant.
I'll talk to my neighbor because he would be great. The guy who lives.
We have until the 30th, and the 30th is
Tuesday. Not on the ballot.
Huh?
Only $32,000. I mean, just go with what we had. Told everybody that we met with, but just go with what we had. $32,000 isn't that big of a difference.
You
We're gonna change it
can.
anyway when the Senate numbers come out.
Absolutely.
true.
Somebody in Ocam?
Oh,
Oh, get him. Yeah, I asked the guy if I could recommend something. He didn't say. Just gotta-
Cheryl, is that the reduction, 32,000?
Well, we had an awful lot of ads. So if, I mean, we can have the meeting if you want
We
to,
can, but we can't make it a vote.
can't make a vote, but if you want to see the changes, we had more ads than subtracts. So that's why it's only $32,000.
I'd like to see it.
All right.
I would, school colleagues, would you like to hear it?
Yes.
Yeah, might as well, yeah.
Am I gonna be posting a meeting for Monday night? Or no? We're gonna go with what we have.
So.
Well, we have time. We'll listen to, we still have time. We know we can post if we need to.
You, okay.
We have to post by 7
It's-
o'clock.
It's, time consuming to post,
Like
just so you know that.
7:30?
Honestly, $32,000 isn't going to make that big of a deal. And they know that we're going to come back with numbers when the Senate budget comes out.
All right.
So listen to the presentation. Maybe somebody will walk in the door. Or then we just go. Of course, the assessment letters are all done, but okay.
Is there
Okay.
any other way that we can hold a vote?
No.
No.
In fact, I don't think you can take a vote on phone.
Oh,
No.
Correct.
Like if everyone would zoom in or
No,
whatever?
if we could get somebody on the phone, I don't think you could take that
Audio.
vote.
Well, it's
That's kind of like a Zoom though, can't you?
No.
It'd have to be Zoom.
It could be anybody.
It has to be Zoom.
So what happens if we don't vote? Is the last passed budget?
The budget that was voted for the public hearing, which is only $32,000 higher.
Yeah.
Would be the one that would go to the assessment letters.
That's not that much.
That's exactly. But at least I think we should hear it and people that hear appreciate it. And I think we should hear
And maybe somebody will come
for
in.
the work and maybe somebody may walk in. We'll see.
Okay, so I'm not gonna post a meeting for Monday night.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Starting
You
to.
already had one heart attack.
Yeah, I already had one tonight. I already pulled one nail off.
Correct.
Will you pick it up?
So I want to turn it over. We're back in. We had our training, FY 24 budget transfer, budget update items. I'm going to turn over to the superintendent. Go from there.
And I'm gonna turn it right over to Cheryl, so.
Jess is gonna bring the presentation up. I think there's one in each one of your packets along with the final budget appropriation control report, which you won't need. This is the second time in my 23 years that this has happened.
Second time in 23 years.
Oh, why am I not sharing? Hang on.
I do remember.
So,
Remember Ed Leonard wanting to go to someone's house to pick them up because they were sick.
And it didn't happen.
Okay, so some information that we received today from Julie Kelly. She's our liaison with Mars to the legislature. While the education funding amendments out of the House budget were received tremendous response from our legislators, sign on as co-sponsors, they were all denied. So that means we were waiting for an increase in regional school transportation reimbursement, which is a reduction from last year, from this year. And we're also waiting to hear on rural school aid, which was cut in half. So apparently those are dead in the House anyway. I guess we could have hope out for the Senate. But if it gets passed to the Senate, then we're going to conference committee and we're here till June or July or August or October. Remember that time? October. So the revenue update with the release from the House Ways and Means budget that came out in April. I'll skip this screen here. Hopefully you can see it better on your printout, but as I mentioned, we had an awful lot of ads because we had some outstanding contract negotiations and bidding that was in place, and we finally came in. Our bus, you already know this, our bus contract, which is not in the last version of the budget, was up by $115,000. The kindergarten orientation transportation up a little bit. Our electricity contract came in at a 28% increase. It starts in November, so it's not a full year, but $46,000. We did receive our Worcester Regional Assessment from the last meeting, and that's down by 37.6. The Teach Point software was actually missing in the budget this year because that's something we used to get free from the French River Collaborative, or whatever they call it, the French River Center, I guess. And now they charge us for it, so that was not in there when we started. Our GIC assessment, which is the retired teachers' health insurance, was actually down. Our telephone system upgrade is down from what was expected. The school business administrator is going to be starting on September 1, which was not budgeted for.
July 1.
July 1. It was budgeted to start when I was to leave, so that's a little increase. We are adding 2 paraprofessionals, but as you can see, we are subtracting 3. The 3 are requested positions, so we're not adding, we're restructuring. We're putting some of them elsewhere, but we're reducing by 1. The business insurances, which I talked about earlier, they were up more than the 5% that I had originally budgeted by $8,000. The school committee insurances actually went down a little bit, $480. And then the superintendent asked the principals to go in into their supply accounts and make adjustments. So what you see from the remainder are adjustments that our principals have made. I know that the high school is still working on some cuts to expenses, as well as Hardwick Elementary, because the principal is out on medical leave. With all of the rest are changes in the budgets at the school level. When the cherry sheets came out with the House budget, our special ed assessment went up by $4,000. Yet, and our school choice sending tuition went up by $2,000, but you'll see that our charter sending tuition went down by $49,000. That was helpful. And we also have a reduction in the athletic support. So all of those changes were made, but the total is $32,070.61. When we apply this to where we were for public hearing, the public hearing budget was 4.1. It's now 4.01 for our version 4. In the cherry sheet, we did get additional money per foundation aid enrollment. It was $30 in the first version of the budget. It went to $104,000, and I guess they went over that $100,000. That was the high point in the past. So they weren't going to give us anything more than $4 extra a kid. You'll see there that our charter reimbursement is down, so our net state aid is $115,576. Our changes to the assessments are $147,647, and that's the difference of the deductions in the budget total. Just want to point those numbers out. Long-term debt revenue does not change, so you'll just do the math here so you understand. Added revenue from the state, $115,576, reduction to the budget, $32,071, which decreases assessment by the $147,647. Assessment levels at this budget amount, again, I think I can bring up my report. So Barry, at the last budget, I don't have
Is
it,
it
it's not on here.
8.3?
8.07.
8.07.
But my document changes when I do the budget changes, so I don't have it with me. If anybody else has an earlier presentation. Pauline, is that the presentation from
Just looking.
Barry the other night?
Get it.
That's not- I remember.
That's tonight's. I can run and get it. I have it on my
No,
desk.
I can bring it up on my screen. Hold on. Okay, Barry, was it 8.07? You can read it what it is, because I can't have both open at the same time. It's not working very well. Go goes down to 7 point what? Somebody?
Two.
Hardwick was 6.84.
6.02,
Harbison 11.98.
11.24,
New Braintree 2.58.
2.00,
And Ocam 5.58.
4.91,
So the average was 8.35 as compared to.
7.58.
So it's really not that big of a difference. I mean, usually at this point in our process, we're looking for every dime. We say it
Right.
matters, it matters. But right now, that's where we are, so. Some next steps, what we're going to continue to do is we're gonna be updating costs as they're known. Still have a few things out. Please don't ask me what they are, though. We will be reviewing staffing patterns for student enrollment and unenrollment, because that will matter, as well as staffing patterns for resignations. It's funny, Colleen and I were going, okay, how are we gonna make this cut? Oh, somebody moved. So you never know. It's happening now. We're getting notifications now of staff. So we'll be checking those things as we move forward. And again, advocate for additional funding from the Senate this year. I think it looks pretty slim that we're gonna get any more. Very short and sweet. Hopefully, we're gonna go right to a vote.
We have a participant?
Any questions on some of the highlights that Carol spoke about? On your first slide, the amendments were denied. The regional transportation reimbursement.
We are assuming that those were denied because of, that is Julie Kelly's statement up there, that they were all denied. They weren't specified, but that's what we believe. I have to say that I did not know what Consolidated Amendment A is, and when I read through it, I was absolutely shocked. Do you want to know why I was shocked?
Yes,
Okay, I'm gonna tell you why I was shocked.
bring up Amendment A.
I think we've said time and time again, there's a flawed formula,
Yes.
and this, they told me, how flawed it was. There's a whole section in here, I'm not online, so you're not gonna see it on there.
Do you want me to make you co-host so you can share your screen?
It'll be too hard to see how small it
Okay.
is. There's a whole section. It says, and further move to amend sections 2, items whatever, with the following words. Provided that not less than $100,000 shall be expended for costs associated with the technology upgrades for the Westford Public School District. That not less than $90,000 shall be expended for the safety upgrades in Hingham Public Schools. Provided further that not less than $100,000 shall be expended for the school resource officer at the Cohasset Public Schools. So apparently, the
You can-
squeaky wheel gets the money. But the best one, Westford?
Westford.
Wow.
What really, I sent this to Julie Kelly. We have this little thing going on and on, but, this one really got me. Where is it? Not less than $100,000 shall be expended for the Fall River Public School District. For what? They just got $14 million in SOA money. It's not even said what it's for. So this is what happens. When they're negotiating these amendments, we're fighting for something that the law says we're supposed to get, regional school transportation, and other districts are out there pounding their senators for more, their House of Representatives for more money. How fair is that?
Wow.
But obviously, we don't complain enough.
Well, and Julie Kelly said, and she felt
There's a whole
really
paragraph,
strongly.
that was only a handful. There's a whole paragraph.
Yeah, she felt really strongly that we did advocate really well and that the legislators listened to us, but were unable to.
Oh, not less than $50,000 shall be expended for the purposes of a pilot project to connect organic gardening, outdoor exercise, healthy food and food preparation and for elementary school children in the Northampton area. Is there any city more green than Northampton? Really?
Right.
I mean, this is crazy.
I was just asking about transportation.
But this is what we did.
I know, I hear you. No, not where the money's going, but it's like these are crazy amendments about asking for this stuff. And then Fall River, which was down 22 million, remember, on their budget issues they had over the past
One of the
year.
top 10 cities.
No, but they have their own budget shortfall they have, Fall River had. And then on top of that, they had the 14 million from SOA money. So they can't even keep their house in order. And here they are asking for $100,000 for a legislative item. I hear you. I hear that frustration. And that's why I was just curious about that. And then the rural school aid, they were trying, there was obviously an amendment to bring it to the 1.5. Is that it? What it
Keep
was?
it,
To
it
keep it at
was
one?
1.5.
That's what I thought. So right now, and I know we still have to deal with the Senate and everything else, what is the regional transportation kind of budgeted at percentage wise?
I don't know.
I remember you said that before,
Because it's been stated by the DESE office that it's 80%.
80%.
However, at the time that this governor's budget was released, not all school districts, even today, not all school districts have their end of year report in for FY '23. Therefore, DESE does not know what the total cost of regional transportation is for FY '23. So my guess is they based it on FY '22. So anybody who had increases in their contract for '23, or like us with increases coming forward, we're not going to see any money. It's not really 80%. People that were doing the calculations for Julie Kelly said it's more like 65. It's more like 70% for me because the districts have had increases in their contracts
Correct.
along the way. So it's not really 80%.
Right. That's where I was trying to get to. Any other questions?
These two figures, when you add for transportation, this is what it's gonna cost more. Like kindergarten orientation, transportation.
Well, sometimes he doesn't charge us, but we have to budget for it because it's part of our contract.
Okay.
So what happens is, Colleen can explain because she just learned it from better than what they just, but they take the incoming kindergartners for a little bus ride around when it's orientation
Yeah,
day.
I do it, so.
You do it, yeah. So, yeah.
I'm just saying, if it was a lot of money, it's not necessary. I don't want to lose my job, but it's not necessary. Save money.
$115 though.
Oh, okay.
I just need something else, yeah.
In total. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Cheryl,
Oh, and the Fall River Superintendent's job was just posted.
I told you. That gentleman doesn't want.
Cheryl, didn't they find a mistake in the formula for, I think it was maybe economically low income people, like some of the districts had the wrong percentage or something, and they sent a lot of money, I think, to Springfield. I think they got 2 million. Did we get anything from that or?
No, we didn't. So what happened tell me how this changes, I don't know. They take the October 1 enrollments, kids are identified as low income, your district as a whole gets a certain level. We were at low income level 7 last year. You get that level. Well, what happened was a lot of districts dropped to a level 6, which is less money per kid, and they went haywire. I bet that squeaky wheel got some money, but the numbers are the numbers. The kids didn't change. your population is no longer as
Poor.
poor, which equals less money. Quabbin, your enrollment is going down, you have less kids, you have hold harmless debt. How is that fair?
Well, wasn't part of it something about, because kids are getting now, everybody's getting free meals, they weren't filling out the form.
That hasn't happened this hasn't happened since 2021. That's not new. And they did that.
So that's not impacting those economic.
I don't know how it can be impacting it, because maybe 6 years ago, when they put CEP community eligibility in place, that's when they stopped collecting low-income applications
Okay.
from all of those districts. So that's been in place a very long time. And we've had free lunch since they came back in 2021.
Okay.
I
thought I read something about that.
And that's gonna continue?
I don't know, because what came out from out of the governor's budget was, she was saying, I saw her on the news, I saw her on the news, free lunch for all the kids, all the school children next year. What came out after Mass Budget and Policy did an analysis, there's not enough money in the budget to pay for all those meals next year.
Via the governor's number,
But that number hasn't changed.
correct, with the House. So now it's up to the Senate.
So what happens in May when they run out of money, and now we have to come up with the difference?
And we've spoken many times about the flawed formula and how the inflation factor they use in this year was 4.25, Cheryl? Was that the figure?
4.5,
4.5. You
because
know,
that's in the law.
correct. And that's how that's flawed, and it's not been adjusted. It's been trying to make some changes, but nothing's moved on any amendment on that. So any other questions for members? Do we have a quorum at this moment?
No.
We have a quorum to be able to have our meeting, but we don't have a quorum, 2/3, the whole committee of the whole, to make any budgetary decisions or transfers at this moment. The difference at this was just, as you outlined with us, you shared with us the pluses and the minuses, and the difference that you were able to, recommendation potentially tonight was about 32,000. Right? We can't make that adjustment ourselves. We cannot do that. We don't have the quorum. So,
It has to be done by a certain date, right?
Assessment letters have to be out by April 30th. That's why it's not worth having a meeting on Monday night for $32,000, in my opinion.
Okay.
and well, so I'm going to ask the superintendent too. Do you feel the same way? And we know, as Cheryl said, that the Senate is still going through its process. And you are still, you ended the presentation with what the next steps were, and you are still going through. So there can still and will, and potentially can be, adjustments to our budget, proposed budget, correct?
I just think that we need to let our towns know that we were unable to hold a vote. While it's only $32,000, it is a show of good faith that we were sharpening our pencil. And while that's all it worked out to be, you can see the significant changes in those line items. So I think it's important for the school committee members, if you're asked by any of your townspeople, to know the answer and have the answer. And then our next steps from here are really, we have to have contingency plans. We're going to need to have a plan B and a plan C, because what's going to happen is if we're making additional cuts to our staffing, we have to notify them by certain time periods. And so we likely are going to be put in a situation where we're having to do that process until we get our budget passed.
When does the Senate?
I'm trying to find
potential-
it. I can't see it. It's
Well,
not
okay.
online anywhere.
And we know we have a meeting, I think, May 11th or so. But if we need to have a special meeting, and now we'll have to just kind of remind our members too of the importance. Again, I know some people were out of town, couldn't be here, but
It's May 9th.
May 9th,
I don't think it'll be out by then.
I don't know.
we won't know the Senate number by then. Okay. So there's no other questions, comments?
Budget vote on May 9th. for this that we discussed tonight?
Why?
Okay, I just didn't know.
I don't-
Well, we have,
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't
you know,
think
unless
so.
there's some other changes that occur that are potentially significant or whatever, there could something come up, but well, that's in your hands at this moment. We are still going through a process
Mhm.
and we are working through that process together, so. If there's no other comments, questions, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved, is there a second? And roll call?
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Darby?
Yes.
Ms. Tardier?
Yes.
Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ms. Muck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson? Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I know this is none of my business and I'm halfway out the door, but I think you should make a statement at the next meeting that if a member cannot make a meeting, especially when there's one where a vote needs necessary and they knew a vote is necessary, just to let Jess know you can't be here. But she wouldn't have been having a heart attack at 6 o'clock saying nobody's, there's not enough here, there's not enough here. Then we could have rescheduled.
No,
But
not,
just, all we need to do is email, I can't make the meeting.
I did.
not only, not because you're halfway out of the door, you enjoyed your years of working as a business administrator, but your statement and observation is right on point and will be reiterated.
Thank you.
Good evening.